When my best friend's mom leaned closer with a playful smile and whispered, "Are you scared of an older woman?" I should have laughed it off. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about her after that night. It started casually, almost too casually to notice at first. I'd been over at my best friend's house countless times, but that evening felt different. Maybe it was the quiet. His mom, Elena, was in the kitchen when I walked in, her sleeves rolled up, hair tucked back, moving with the calm grace of someone who never rushed. The soft sound of simmering sauce filled the air, blending with the faint scent of basil and garlic. She glanced over her shoulder, smiled, and her eyes lingered for just a beat longer than usual. It was nothing more than a glance, but it sent a strange warmth through me, one I tried to ignore. "You're early," she teased lightly, wiping her hands on a towel. "Or maybe my son just keeps me waiting too much." Her tone was playful, but there was something beneath it, a spark of attention directed only at me. I felt my throat tighten as I laughed it off, pretending I hadn't noticed the way her gaze flicked down and back up, as if measuring me. The conversation was simple, about school, about how her son never cleaned his room, but the atmosphere shifted with every small detail. Her voice carried an ease, rich and warm, yet every now and then a pause would hang in the air. I could feel myself leaning slightly closer without realizing it, drawn to the subtle perfume clinging to her skin. At one point, she stepped nearer to pass me a plate, her hand brushing against mine. It was the lightest touch, but it left my skin tingling. She noticed. I could see it in the way her lips curved, not into a laugh, but a knowing smile. That was when she said it. "Are you scared of an older woman?" Her voice lowered, teasing but deliberate, almost daring. She wasn't looking for an answer so much as watching how I would react. I froze for a moment, caught between laughing and confessing the truth that no, I wasn't scared at all. If anything, the thought thrilled me. My chest felt tight, my pulse quickening in a way I couldn't disguise. But before I could say anything, my friend walked in, breaking the spell instantly. Elena turned smoothly, acting as if nothing had happened. The casual warmth returned, but for me, everything had shifted. That single playful question echoed in my head long after. And for the first time, I realized I couldn't look at her the same way again. The next time I saw Elena, I told myself I'd act normal. Just a polite hello, the same casual friendliness as always. But the truth was, her words from that night had already carved their place in my mind. "Are you scared of an older woman?" They replayed whenever I let my guard down, stirring something restless inside me. She was sitting in the living room when I arrived, sunlight falling across her from the window. A book rested in her lap, but her eyes lifted the moment she sensed me. That same smile, the one that lingered just long enough to feel intentional, spread across her lips. "You're here early again," she said softly. "I'm starting to think you just like keeping me company." Her voice was light, playful, but her gaze held steady. I could feel it pulling at me, like she was waiting to see if I'd flinch or lean in closer. My chest tightened, and though I tried to play it off with a shrug, I knew the heat in my cheeks betrayed me. When I sat down, the couch seemed suddenly smaller, every inch between us charged with awareness. She shifted slightly, crossing one leg over the other, and the faint rustle of fabric seemed louder than it should have. Her perfume, something floral and understated, drifted in the air between us, impossible to ignore. She asked me about my plans, about school, about music. On the surface, it was ordinary conversation, but beneath it all ran a current of unspoken things. Her hand rested lightly on the arm of the couch, fingers tapping once, twice, as though she was considering reaching across that small space. At one point, she laughed, low and genuine, the sound curling warmly in my chest. When her laughter faded, her eyes didn't look away. They stayed fixed on me, unblinking, as if she was searching for something she wasn't sure she should find. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. All I could manage was a half smile, which only made her tilt her head slightly, studying me with quiet amusement. Then, almost without thought, she reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture felt intimate, like it was meant only for me to notice. My heart thudded against my ribs, and for a fleeting second, I swore the world around us had gone completely still. It was just a glance, just a moment of silence, but it carried weight. Heavy enough to make me realize that nothing about this was casual anymore. The weeks that followed blurred together, but the feeling never left me. Every time I visited, every time Elena walked into the room, my chest grew tight with anticipation I didn't dare admit. It wasn't about what she said or did, it was the way she was. Effortless. Confident. Yet underneath it, I sensed something softer, almost hidden. One evening, I found her alone in the backyard. The air carried the cool touch of early night, and the glow from the porch light traced delicate lines along her face. She was sitting at a small wooden table, a glass of wine in her hand, the stem cradled between her fingers. "You're quiet tonight," she said when she noticed me. I hesitated before sitting across from her, the chair creaking faintly beneath me. "Just, a lot on my mind, I guess." Her eyes softened. She tilted her head, studying me the way she always did, like she wanted to read every thought I didn't speak aloud. "You carry yourself like someone older," she said gently. "But sometimes, I forget you're not." The word struck me deeper than I expected. I wasn't sure if she meant it as a compliment or a reminder of the distance between us. I forced a laugh, but it came out weaker than I intended. She reached forward then, resting her hand lightly on mine. Her touch was steady, warm, and the sensation shot through me, grounding and electrifying at once. "I didn't mean it as a bad thing," she added. "Just. I notice you." The air between us seemed to thicken. I wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the gap, but my thoughts tangled. I managed only a quiet, "I notice you too." Her expression flickered, a brief crack in her composure. Vulnerability, bare and unguarded, flashed in her eyes before she drew in a slow breath, pulling her hand back with practiced ease. "You shouldn't," she murmured, almost to herself, though her gaze didn't leave mine. I leaned forward slightly, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Why not?" She looked away then, into the dark stretch of the yard, as if the shadows could hide her answer. "Because it complicates things," she said. Her voice was soft, but the weight of it settled heavily between us. And yet, in that moment, even with her warning, I felt more certain than ever, what I felt for her wasn't going away. After that night in the backyard, things changed in ways that were subtle, but undeniable. The air between us seemed charged, fragile, as though any wrong move could shatter the balance we pretended to keep. I noticed how often our eyes lingered, how conversations stretched longer than they should have, how silence itself carried meaning. One afternoon, I came over while my friend wasn't home yet. Elena answered the door, her hair tied loosely, a casual sweater draped over her shoulders. She looked surprised at first, but then her lips curved into that small, knowing smile. "Guess it's just us for a while," she said lightly, stepping aside to let me in. Her voice was calm, but her posture betrayed her. The way she held her arms loosely across her chest, then dropped them quickly, as though she didn't want to seem guarded. I noticed, and I think she knew I noticed. We sat in the kitchen. She made coffee, moving around the space with practiced ease, but I could feel her awareness of me, how her movements slowed when I leaned against the counter, how her eyes flicked toward me in the reflection of the window. When she set the mug in front of me, our fingers brushed again. A spark, immediate and sharp, ran through me. I caught the briefest hitch in her breath before she pulled back, covering it with a casual sip of her own cup. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said finally, her voice quiet, almost breaking the stillness of the room. My stomach tightened. "Like what?" Her eyes lifted, steady but soft, as if daring me to admit it. "Like you're waiting for me to cross a line." The truth lodged in my throat, heavy and unspoken. I didn't want to scare her away, didn't want to ruin the fragile thing building between us. But the way she said it, half a warning, half an acknowledgement, told me she felt it too. I leaned forward slightly, my hand resting on the table, inches from hers. Maybe I'm just waiting for you to tell me where the line really is. Her lips parted, the faintest breath escaping, and for a second I thought she might answer. Instead, she pushed her chair back and stood, her movements deliberate but not cold. "You're too young to be asking questions like that," she said, but her voice wavered just enough to betray her. And as she walked away, leaving me with the bitter taste of coffee and the echo of her words, I realized something undeniable: she was fighting this as hard as I was. The distance she tried to put between us only made me more aware of how close we had already become. Every word, every glance, every brush of her hand left an imprint. And I could see it weighed on her too, the way her laughter came a beat slower, the way her eyes seemed to hold something she couldn't say. One evening, a storm rolled in. Heavy rain tapped against the windows, and thunder rumbled low in the distance. My friend was out, caught up in something else, but I found myself at their house anyway, drawn there without much thought. Elena was in the living room, curled up on the sofa with a blanket draped over her legs, a soft lamp casting a warm glow across her face. She looked up when I stepped in, surprise flickering across her features before it softened into something gentler. "You'll get soaked walking around in this weather," she said, her voice quieter than usual. I shrugged, trying to play it off. Maybe I was hoping for an excuse to stop by. Her smile was small, hesitant, as though she wasn't sure if she should let it linger. Still, she shifted the blanket and patted the space beside her. "Sit before you catch a cold." I sank down next to her, the warmth of her body seeping through the thin space between us. The storm outside faded into background noise. What I noticed instead was the rise and fall of her breathing, the faint scent of her hair, the way her shoulder brushed against mine every so often. For a while, we said nothing. Just sat there, side by side, listening to the rain. Then, softly, she spoke. "You don't make this easy for me," she admitted, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the blanket. I turned toward her, my chest tightening. "I don't mean to make it hard." Her eyes found mine, steady but filled with conflict. "You do. Because you're kind. Because you look at me like I'm not just somebody's mom." The words hung between us, fragile and unguarded. I could see her struggling, caught between what she thought was right and what she felt. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't untouchable. She wasn't the confident, composed figure I had always seen. She was human. Vulnerable. Afraid of her own heart. Without thinking, I reached for her hand under the blanket. She didn't pull away. Her fingers curled slowly around mine, trembling just slightly, as though she knew the wall she had built was beginning to crack. After that night with the storm, everything between us shifted. We didn't talk about the way her fingers had laced with mine, but it lingered there, unspoken, in every glance and every pause that followed. It was as though we had both stepped past a line but pretended we hadn't, holding our breath in the fragile silence. One afternoon, I stopped by while my friend was out running errands. Elena opened the door, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Her hair was pulled back, loose strands framing her face, and she wore a simple blouse that somehow made her seem even more unreachable. But her eyes, those gave her away. They softened the moment they landed on me, full of something she was trying not to show. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though her hand stayed on the doorframe, not pushing me away. I swallowed, my pulse quick. "Then tell me to leave." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she stepped back, letting me in. The house was quiet, too quiet, as I followed her into the kitchen. She busied herself with nothing, moving a glass, adjusting a towel, until finally she stopped, her hands braced against the counter. I stood behind her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her back. "Elena," I said softly. She turned, slowly, as though the motion itself carried weight. When her eyes met mine, it was like everything we'd been holding back pressed forward at once. "You don't understand what this would mean," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady enough to make the warning clear. "Then explain it to me," I replied, my voice low, almost pleading. Her gaze flicked down to my mouth, then back up, and the smallest breath caught in her throat. She lifted her hand, hesitating, then let it rest against my chest. The warmth of her palm seeped through my shirt, settling over my heartbeat. I felt everything in that touch, the conflict, the longing, the fear. My own hand rose instinctively, brushing lightly against her arm, my fingers tracing the soft line of her skin. For one suspended moment, the world shrank to the space between us. The storm that had started weeks ago now thundered silently in the closeness of that kitchen. Then she pulled away, her hand falling as if the weight of it burned. "This is dangerous," she whispered, shaking her head, though her eyes betrayed her, dark, restless, and unwilling to let go. And I knew, as surely as she did, that we had reached the edge of surrender. The days after that afternoon in the kitchen felt heavier, yet clearer. We had stood at the edge of something dangerous, and though she had pulled back, neither of us could forget the closeness. It wasn't just about attraction anymore. It was about everything we hadn't said but had already admitted in the silences. One evening, when the house was calm and my friend was upstairs, I found her in the dining room. She was setting the table, slow and deliberate, as though keeping her hands busy helped her keep her thoughts steady. The soft glow of the overhead light wrapped her in warmth, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Elena," I said gently, and she froze. She set the last plate down, exhaled, then turned to face me. Her eyes carried the same mix of strength and fragility I'd come to know, like she wanted to hold firm but couldn't quite mask her heart. "We can't keep pretending," I continued. "Not after everything." Her lips curved into the faintest, weary smile. "You think I don't know that?" she murmured. "Every time you walk into this house, I feel it. I feel you. And I keep telling myself it's wrong, but the truth," she trailed off, shaking her head as though admitting it out loud made it more real. I stepped closer, slowly, giving her space to turn away if she wanted. She didn't. Her breath grew unsteady as I reached for her hand, letting my fingers slip over hers. She didn't resist. Instead, she squeezed back, as though she had been waiting for permission to stop fighting. "I don't care about the rules," I whispered. "I just care about what's real." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for reassurance, and for the first time, she didn't look away. "You make me feel seen. Alive. But you have no idea how much I've tried to stop myself from wanting this." I closed the space between us, carefully, until I could feel her warmth. My free hand brushed her arm, then rested lightly at her side. Her forehead tipped forward, leaning against my chest, and in that quiet gesture, every wall she'd built seemed to fall away. Her voice was barely audible. "Stay here, just like this. That's all I want right now." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. The world outside, the judgments, the complications, faded. What remained was simple, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against mine, the warmth of her breath, the certainty that neither of us was running anymore. For the first time, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt like the truth. I held her a little tighter, not saying anything, because words weren't needed anymore. What mattered was the quiet truth we had finally allowed ourselves to feel. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, slow, heartfelt, and full of the tension that makes love unforgettable, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.